Are you wondering what it's like to have a natural birth? Today I'm going to talk to you all about what it's like to have a natural birth so that you can take the fear out of it. But before I begin, hey mamas, it's your CajunStork here, Midwife Kyra. I believe in truly natural birth because I know that it makes for better birth experiences. Consider subscribing to my channel and joining in today's conversation about natural birth. And don't forget, if you look in the description below, I've included my midwife recommended birth packing and supply list just for you. In light of coronavirus, I have noticed, well, I think the whole country has noticed, a huge influx of women seeking out of hospital birth. But what I love about it in my practice is a lot of the clients who've been switching to midwifery care in my practice are women who had been considering natural birth or long-time natural birthing mamas who have finally gotten their husbands on board with the idea of out-of-hospital birth. So thankfully, I haven't been having to encourage women to have natural birth as much as I have been just kind of encouraging them through all of the stress of the pandemic going on. But for those people that I am consulting with who may not have been natural birthers before, what I'm noticing is a very common idea about natural birth being overly painful and suffering. So I want to give you an analogy, and I want to take the fear out of natural birth because that's just completely misleading and it's wrong. When a bodybuilder is lifting weights, what do? They make noise. They lift with all their might. People around them cheer. They get excited. They're impressed. They're blown away. It doesn't matter how loud the noise is. Nobody watching the bodybuilder lift ever thinks, I wonder if they're in pain. What they're thinking is,
wow, that person is so strong. Holy cow, I wish I could lift like that.
So why then is natural birth treated differently? Why is it that when a woman desires an unmedicated birth, she is surrounded by people who tell her she can't do it, she's not strong enough, she's gonna regret it, they laugh at her, they pick on her? Why does our culture do that? Well, I personally, from a midwife's perspective, believe that a big chunk of where this comes from is the fact that the majority of Americans choose hospital births. And the majority of hospital birthers have epidurals. Even natural birthers who walk into the hospital wanting a natural birth often end up with an epidural. Now, many of them for a variety of reasons, but I can tell you from experience, one of the main reasons why they end up with an epidural or these traumatic, oh, natural birth was awful stories is because they're giving birth in the wrong location. I want you to imagine giving birth in an environment that is conducive to natural birth. Dim lights, soft music, no strangers, no restrictions on food, no being tied down to monitors, complete freedom of movement, complete trust in your care provider who you know on a first name basis, switching positions when things get uncomfortable, getting into the water when you're working hard, being encouraged when you feel like you can't go anymore, and right at the very end, when you feel like you just cannot do this, your midwife says, reach down and touch your baby's head. Your baby's right there. That is why out-of-hospital birthers have a 93% chance of having a vaginal birth, compared to local hospitals here who have a 60% chance of achieving a natural birth. When you walk into the hospital, the first 30 minutes is bright lights, lots of people flooding into the room, asking you questions about your chickenpox history, miscarriage history. Like, who wants to talk about that when they're giving birth? And it does create a level of adrenaline, which increases your pain level. And then once all of that settles down, you're being told you can't eat and drink, stay in the bed, only go pee really quickly, and then rush back to the monitors. If you do get out of the bed, you have 6 feet of wire to work with. The nurse is gonna check you. Oh, now the doctor's gonna check you. I mean, the list just goes on and on about why a hospital birth is not necessarily conducive to having a truly natural birth experience that most of us come to love. Another thing I find interesting is that instinctually, we tend to believe for our first pregnancies walking into our OBGYN's office, the midwifery model of care is what we're going to receive. To be sadly disappointed that we waited for 45 minutes to see our doctor, got 5 minutes of time to be told our baby is alive, and our vitals are good, and we go home. A lot of the consults I've seen during coronavirus have come from women just being disappointed in the quality of care, or the lack thereof, that they're receiving from their OBGYNs. It's not that there's anything wrong with your doctor. It's a different model of care. What a midwifery appointment looks like is completely different, just like the birth. You're gonna walk into your appointment, you have 45 minutes of unlimited one-on-one time with your midwife, where you just really get to connect and talk about not just is your baby alive and your vitals are good, but are you prepared for motherhood? How's your diet? How are you feeling? How can I help you guys transition at home into being prepared for your baby? And oh my gosh, during a pandemic, there is so much more that midwives have to offer during a pandemic where everyone's stressed out and you need that warm and fuzzy feeling to know that you're safe and everything's fine. Women are flooding to out-of-hospital birth now more than ever, and I think this has been an awakening for America to have better birth experiences, and I will be so interested to see in the coming months, maybe years, about the statistics on the increase in vaginal births in America because of out-of-hospital midwifery is finally being sought. So the topic of this video is about natural birth. What is natural birth like, and is it suffering? And it's not. See, when women suffer in labor, something's wrong. Have I ever seen a woman suffer in labor? Yes. I can think of 2 experiences that I've been through as a midwife where women have suffered in labor. Both of them were very different. The first one was a first-time mom suffering. She was suffering. And that's not what midwifery is about, and that's not what natural birth is about. And I came into her birth suite and I said, "Sweetie, this isn't normal." And she said, "Please, I don't want an epidural. I can do this." And I said, "Let me check you." Do you know that she was 9 centimeters? So she was suffering with a purpose. She was suffering because for her first baby, her labor was so fast that she was suffering because her labor was going so fast. It was super intense. Suffering with a purpose. So we're not going to let her sit around and suffer for hours. But since she was right there at the end of her birth, it made so much sense that, oh yeah, you're suffering because fast births, they hurt. The second one was a third-time mom, 2 prior vaginal births, who's laboring, and she just kept saying, "Kyra, something's not right. Something's not right." And she was in a lot of pain, unusual pain for her labor. And her baby sounded fine, her vitals were fine, everything was fine, but I trust mama's intuition. And when she said something's not right, I said, "Okay, let's go in. You shouldn't be suffering, something's not right." Sure enough, she ultimately ended up in a C-section, and she was right. Her baby was not gonna come out vaginally. So suffering in labor tells us as a healthcare provider that something's not working right, or like I mentioned in the first birth, where it's working so fast, it's overly painful. But that's not the average birth. If I could wish a labor on someone, a 6-hour labor would be perfect, because 6-hour labors ultimately lead to normal birth without any suffering. But a natural birth should not be suffering. So if you've attended or been to or have tried to give birth in the hospital naturally, and your perspective is that natural birth hurts and it's awful, I strongly encourage you to try an out-of-hospital birth with a licensed midwife and see the difference. You will be amazed at what it's like to labor in an environment that you're familiar with people that you know, people that you trust, with all the things that release oxytocin in labor, that love hormone. The things that release oxytocin in labor are the same things that release oxytocin when you're making love to your husband, for example. Dim lights, a private space, connection, kissing your husband releases oxytocin in labor. If you have people around, which I hope you're not for making love to your husband, but in birth, it's people that you know and you trust and you feel comfortable being around. A comfortable environment. Aromatherapy can release oxytocin in labor, like good, pleasant scents in labor, along with the dim lights, soft music. These are the things that stimulate oxytocin, that love hormone that makes labor work better. Being off of your back, switching positions, getting in a position that you feel comfortable in, non-directed pushing, snacking in labor when you're tired. All of these things will make such a big difference in your birth. So when the bodybuilder is lifting weights and hollering and making noise to get those weights off the ground and into the air, and we all shout for him. But when the natural birther makes sound while she's in labor and we pity her, we really need to rethink about the strength of women in labor. When women make noise in labor, they are strong. It does not mean that they're hurting. It means that they're working hard. And I am here to tell you that yes, natural birth is intense. You are working hard. You're working hard, pain with a purpose, just like the bodybuilder getting the weights off the ground. But you should not be suffering the same way a bodybuilder doesn't suffer. If he's suffering, he's injured. If a woman in labor is suffering, something is wrong. So let that encourage you that natural birth is possible, it can be done, and it's best done in an environment that's best suited for it, which is out of the hospital, in a birth center, or in your own home with a licensed midwife that you personally have come to know and trust, in an environment that you're familiar with people that you're familiar with, freedom of movement, and just all of those awesome things that make natural birth more pleasant and more comfortable. What are some other ways that we can make natural birth more comfortable? Well, I want you to watch my video right here on comfort measures in labor and how to stay comfortable in labor. And I'm gonna see you guys over there. Thanks for watching this Midwife Monday. Bye-bye.